Hey beeps and boops, welcome to a very special episode of Bot Talk. Every so often I want to do an episode where I get a little bit more in depth on a specific topic, less about updating you on the news and crypto. So that's today. So let's dig in. And today's topic will be information, where I get mine, how it works in this modern age, sources of information in a world that, let's face it, is dealing with issues with like what is truth. Fake news is thrown around all the time. And I actually have some specific opinions, and I want to talk about it because it's kind of what I do here on this channel is I look at news stories and I talk about them. And so I want to talk about where I get sources. It's not so much going to be a list. It's not like these are the sources you should go to and these are the ones I use. You'll see a little of that. But I'm actually going to just break down categories. You're encouraged to find all the sources you want. Very much my message here today is not going to be here's who's right and here's who's wrong. It's that every source has pros and cons, and everybody should be taken with a grain of salt because everyone has an agenda. That'll come up a lot. So, without further ado, let's basically get into it. Oh, the orchid was wildly popular. 100% positive feedback on the orchid last episode, so it'll be around for a minute at least. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's start off with the first, the four major sources I'm going to talk about. The four kind of threads of where I get information and where people tend to get information in the current media landscape. Big mainstream media sources, smaller sources, but still like news blogs and such, social media, and the people you actually know around you. Now, obviously, these are all kind of an ecosystem of sources of information. I'm going to talk about how they feed into each other. But let's get into it by starting off with big mainstream sources of news. Now, I know you know these sources. This is basically like, let's say, like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, other ones like internationally like Guardian and Al Jazeera and more BBC, and there's lots of them. And they're pros and cons. I am not here to shill the big name sources any more than I'm here to crap all over them. I know there's a lot of controversy about it. I would submit, and this will come up with every level of sources that I'm talking about, that you should understand what they're trying to tell you and why they want you to believe that as best you can, but it doesn't mean you take them as truth. I wouldn't submit to take anybody on any level as truth, flat out, like authority of truth. Just know what they want you to think and try to figure out why. So that's why the mainstream sources get criticized a lot, and for a lot of rightly so for a lot of reasons. They've been caught in lies. They definitely have agendas. Big corporation news sources are owned by even bigger companies that have reasons for you to think certain things. I'm not trying to get down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. It's just the reality of the landscape. They work with governments, they work with business, and they have agendas. That's okay. That's how it works. They've always been that way in some form or another. Just know that that's what game they're playing. Now, at some point, it's kind of a spectrum. It starts to become more independent news sources as you go down the line. And you have, slightly lower, less mainstream sources, but they still will have political agendas. Usually as you get a little bit lower down the line, their political agendas become even more overt, not that they're subtle on the top tier. But everything from a Drudge Report to an NPR or something. NPR is kind of a little bit bigger, but point is you get the whole political spectrum. Not here to argue for a political spectrum. I look at both. I learn from both. I have views that lean various ways, but I do not blindly associate myself on either end. So just know that this is not about telling you to go after one side or the other for your news sources. So yeah, the more independent stuff, it can get a little bit even more hotly polarized than some of the mainstream stuff. And of course, you have even some bigger issues with how reputable they are. At best, you just want to look at a source's history if you really want to understand it and see what kind of stuff they publish. Does it seem like they're trying to push an agenda? They will be on some level always. That's not going to go away. We're going to bring this up again and again. But how clear are they about the agenda they're pushing? I kind of like that some sites wear their political affiliation on their sleeve, if only because you know what you're getting, and it's not subtle. As opposed to a site that's like, no, we're totally neutral, but if you read between the lines, they're not. It's okay to have an agenda. Literally everyone does, but it's important to know what your news source's agenda is. So anyway, that's basically the second tier, is like the slightly more independent news sources, but obviously it trickles down from the big mainstream sources. Next would be basically social media. This includes things like forums. Big one is Reddit, obviously, but almost any kind of internet forum is kind of in that realm. You have, of course, your Twitter, your Facebook, your YouTube. I'm naming the big ones. Every single one of these has smaller, more independent affiliates that kind of do the same thing. But I would say all fall into the same broad category. Like what I'm about to say applies across the board. Oh, I should also make it clear that I haven't really addressed where I get my crypto news, but that's because I just see crypto news as a branch of news, and all these logical levels apply to any branch of news. Crypto, government news, political, business, environmental news. You're going to see these same patterns of like different sources and how they apply. So, just to clarify. So, yeah, social media. Obviously, this show itself applies to that because this is on YouTube. What you want to know about with this level is that first of all, you get more of what people actually think coming through these channels, but don't think these channels aren't also moderated and censored to a degree. It just becomes a little bit more chaotic, I'd say, because you have like Reddit. I'm not trying to call out Reddit, but you definitely have some fast and loose moderation going on some subreddits. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. They all have a different personality. Knowing the personality of, like, say, your forum, whether it's Reddit or otherwise, is part of knowing who you're getting your information from. They're going to have an agenda. The mod will have an agenda. Everyone posting will have an agenda. Just be aware of that. Same goes for Facebook, Twitter. And also know that these are like funnels. They're largely going to be, yes, people are adding their opinions, and you will get some cool independent news here and there, but they're also funneling news from the previous levels that I talked about, the mainstream and independent news sources. But you'll just get more of their opinion injected, the person who's posting it. But yeah, there's still manipulation going on here, both from the individual up to the company running this social media thing to possibly intervention from like things like governments and businesses acting as external players. It's manipulated, but it's manipulated potentially by so many sources that it kind of becomes it's evened out just knowing that you're hearing all these forms of manipulation in the news that you're getting. Be aware of that. So, and yeah, YouTube, similar thing. I mean, it's very much what I'm doing right now. People sharing news sources with you and talking about it. Don't take me at any more authority than anybody, kind of obviously. The guy with a handful of subscribers. So, but that's my point, is that really it shouldn't be about, every source can be taken on its own merits, but you have to look at it. There's no blind authority. There should be no blind condemnation either. So the last level, the most intimate level, really is like your friends and family, your people in your life who talk to you. They'll give you information too. Again, they're funneling the higher levels. They're funneling what they saw on social media. They're funneling what they saw on the news, but they're also bringing their own ideas and experience, and they might tell you something you really didn't know that those other sources couldn't have. They're equally valid. But they're biased. Your best friends, your brothers, your sisters, everybody, like your coworkers, they're biased. They're not bad people. Maybe they are, but that's not the point. They might be great people. They might be bad people. They might be mediocre people. But they're biased because everyone is. Of their experiences, where they've gotten their news. It's okay. Just take them with a grain of salt too. Why do they say what they say? It doesn't mean they're wrong. If they always say BS, then, take everything they say a little bit more carefully. If they actually think about what they say, then take them with a little bit more authority. But not, again, I don't like to throw around the word authority, because it becomes this thing where someone just must be right or wrong because of whatever. Anybody, even somebody with a great track record of telling the truth, can at least make a mistake, if not outright lie, for various reasons. I mean, I'm talking as a blanket statement here. So basically, but your friends and family, you also have that higher degree of intimacy. You can probe them more for questioning, like why do you believe? I think ideally, if you want to have healthy discourse on topics, you should. I don't really believe in blindly going, you must be right or you must be wrong. Instead, be like, why do you believe that? Where did you get that information? What do you think about that? Maybe if you can think of challenges to their opinion, put them forward, but in a polite way. I don't mean to just sit here and tell you how to discourse. I just mean that I see a lot of, let's face it, there's a lot of tension out there right now and a lot of heated, unproductive debates going on. And I think that it's really important that we talk about everything we're talking about out there right now. In fact, I'll make videos in the future where we talk about those specific issues. But I wanted to first talk about how we talk and how we think about information, how I think about information. I've said it before, I'm eternally a student here. I'm a student sharing my notes with y'all. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit Bot Talk or me up on Twitter. And I'd love to talk more. I'd like to hear what you think I missed or what I didn't think of. Yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. That's how I approach information as best I can in those different tiers. And trust no one, but don't assume people are liars. Just pay attention to what various sources want you to think and why. Well, that should wrap up this first very special episode. I will do more in the future, but we'll get around to them maybe one a week, maybe one every couple weeks. I'll be back on Friday, though, with another news update and crypto market update. And so check that out. And, hit me up on Twitter if you want to talk about anything or talk to me in the comments below. Have a great week, and let's start this robot revolution together.